All right. Thank you for clicking on, tuning in, joining us. I'm Randy Cross, and this is Unsafe Spaces. Sort of my selections of stories and thoughts and fun and sports and a lot of different things, as you'll see here in our 13th edition of Unsafe Spaces. Okay, let's get this thing going and take a look back at what happened this last week between shows. Well, during this past week, in fact, in the last few days, you had the events that happened in Charlottesville, Virginia. Nothing really good comes together when you get groups of people that sincerely hate each other. The most egregious thing that happened was this complete idiot, felon / soon-to-be murderer, officially, drove his car through the crowd, killing one 32-year-old woman. And then everything that's ensued since then has been sort of otherworldly. But outside of that, Charlottesville is an experience that taught people about just how bad some of the hate groups in this country can be, especially the neo-Nazi / white supremacist. In fact, there was a great picture of this guy screaming, who's one of the white nationalists. And he made the mistake of saying that he hated the fact that everyone was spreading his picture all over the internet, which I think about, 100 times, 1,000 times, multiplied the number of times his picture was spread over the internet. Terrible thing. Nothing good actually comes out of stuff like this. Because it's all radical views and it's all radical reactions. And it's just got nothing for you that's positive when it comes to that. Baseball is back at it, or still at it, here in the summer during the dog days. And that usually means two things. Either guys are getting hurt, a guy like Bryce Harper getting a little bloodied playing baseball, or as happened, Bryce Harper, they thought might have blown his knee out, landing strange on it. Turns out he'll just be out for about a month, but once the playoffs get going, he is going to be available. And being one of the best, or arguably the best player in the entire game, the game needs guys like that. Just like basketball can't afford to lose a LeBron or a KD or anyone of that status, baseball also does not have that many super duper stars that can go down and go away. This weekend, we saw a new PGA champion crowned in the world of golf. Great tournament. Was really, really fun to watch. Just everything that happened up there outside of Charlotte, North Carolina, Quail Hollow. Sergio Garcia was at it. He had won a major already earlier this year. Jordan Spieth was trying to be the youngest PGA player to ever win all 4 majors. It's nuts. He didn't do it, but Justin Thomas did win the PGA. And one of the great scenes of that entire deal, just to emphasize the youngins, the millennials that have taken over the game of golf, was after that round was over, Jordan Spieth out there, T-shirt, hat on backwards. He and Ricky Fowler, another one of the 20-somethings that's doing so well in the PGA, greeting Justin Thomas as he walks off the green. Just sort of the bros now run golf moment in sports. For those of you that are like me that really enjoy the Game of Thrones, well, HBO and the Game of Thrones did not disappoint here in season 7. Episode 5. This was the preview. This was the teaser for the episode that ran last Sunday.
I'm not here to murder. Bend the knee and join me. Or refuse and die.
She ain't playing, by the way.
You need to find a way to make her listen.
Whatever stands in our way, we will defeat it.
Bran saw the Night King and his army marching towards Eastwatch.
Bad things are coming.
Very good. Hasn't that whole Walking Dead thing already been done for the last few years. Just curious. But this is going to be fun. We've got 2 more episodes left. And as has happened the last several seasons of Game of Thrones, it's usually not the last episode where all the action is and the craziness is, because usually in the last episode, they'll set up a lot of stories for the next year. Well, episode 6, which airs next Sunday, it's going to be on like Donkey Kong. It's going to be crazy. And if you haven't started watching it, or if you've just started watching it, I won't ruin anything for you. But there were enough teasers last week that there should be a lot of death, destruction, and incestuous craziness going on in Game of Thrones. All right. NFL preseason got underway. And anytime the NFL preseason starts, that means guys are going to get hurt. And we've seen big injuries here in week 1 of the NFL preseason. And that's just, I'm sorry, that's going to happen anytime you have football being played. There's no half-speed way to do it. I know they try to practice at half speed. They try to practice it without too many collisions and too much in the way of injury risk. But once you start playing, you're going to have guys get hurt. One of the biggest examples of that whole thing, when it comes to, we'll be talking about later. Last year, Teddy Bridgewater, remember that name I mentioned, Minnesota quarterback, got hurt just about a year ago. Leading up to the 2016 season, and it was not pretty. We haven't seen that degree of an injury yet, but I guarantee you one thing, you can count on it. Somebody's losing a star here pretty quick, and I'm not talking about the Cowboys, because they've already lost their star. And Ezekiel Elliott won't be around for the first 6 games of the season, and I think that's justified. Let's talk about another story that we briefly touched on last week, about the number of eligible voters in the state of California last week, and the number of actual registered voters. Well, Judicial Watch did another study where they found that there are 3.5 million more voters registered than the number of eligible voters out there. Matter of fact, 21 states. Yep, 21 states. And if you don't need an ID, anybody can vote. No matter how, you can vote a couple of times in a couple of different places. But here's a list of the 21 states in our country where they don't have 3.5 million voters. And we've got 3.5 million ghost voters, according to Judicial Watch. Keep track of that story. Let's see how that goes. I think a great story out of New York State, to be more specific. West Point. The U.S. Army and the Academy is up there in West Point, and the first African-American female first cadet was named this week. Simone Askew is her name. It's a fantastic achievement, I think, for her. Eventually, these stories will not have, these breakthrough stories won't have the sort of the impact that at times they do in the sports/real world, because they won't be that big a deal, because there'll be people that have already done this before. So when you open up a website or you open up a newspaper, you're not seeing, like some gigantic meteor is coming to Earth and, wiping out all life. That big of a story. It's not that big of a story. Fantastic for Simone and what she's achieved. And I couldn't be prouder as an American and as somebody that's been around that academy and seeing the quality of young men and women that are in those academies and that come out of those academies and that serve their country. They're the best of the best. And there's no other way to put it. I think it's fantastic stuff. We've talked a little bit about the events of the last week, and specifically the whole reaction over Charlottesville and what has happened there. Somehow the incivility and the immediate ramp up to, from high to FU of sports radio has now come into the normal media. Now that's what we're dealing with. In fact, there's a great quote out there that I want to put up on the screen because it's worth reading. This embodies everything we see about our media these days. Read this. Some people seem to be more outraged and offended because other people are not outraged and offended by the same things that offend and outrage them. That's not double talk. That's dead straight, spot on, perfect. That defines everyone's point of view of late. They have no consideration for the other side of an argument. Because they'd rather just shout it down. They have no consideration to hear facts about any side of the argument. In their minds, and when I say they, I mean on the right, on the left, in the middle, on the top, on the bottom. I don't care where you're coming from. There's always another side to the argument. Now, it might be reprehensible. It might be something you cannot defend, but don't react like it doesn't exist. That quote is perfect to describe where we're at right now. It used to just be the world of sports that was that unreasonable. Now it's everybody. Welcome to our party. All right, let's go to my favorite part of the show every single week, and that is Butthurt of the Week. Cue the Matador. Oh. And just for my daughter, Kelly, we won't stay on this picture too long. First story in Butthurt of the Week is not so much an individual that might be butthurt, but more an entire country. At least the citizens of one particular city. Because it was about a year ago, the 2016 Summer Olympics were being put on in Rio de Janeiro, where they had spent, listen to this, $4.6 billion. So a third world, starving, dirty running water kind of a country spent $4.6 billion putting on shows like this in the opening and closing ceremonies, just to have it a year later look kind of like, I don't know, an abandoned site. These were beautiful pictures. But $4.6 billion and one Olympics later, this is what those venues look like now. And you could take this in Russia for the Sochi Olympics. You can go to almost any Olympic venue, and it looks like this. And really, the sad thing is, LA showed you the model in 1984. And everyone sold it corporately like LA in 84. But LA wasn't burdened with all these different facilities. They had existing facilities. So this is where the opening and closing ceremonies were. This is where soccer was put on. Okay? 70, 80,000 seat stadium is now literally kind of going to weeds and seed because why do they? I mean, they had existing stadiums. And then all these venues, they might as well just tear them down. Why not just build public housing? Let the homeless live in those venues. That would be putting it to much better use. And there's just a little tiny window. I won't go off on a rant here, but how corrupt and what a world of BS the Olympic movement has become an organization. Not the Olympics, because I still have a world of respect for the athletes. I have a world of respect for the accomplishments and the dedication it takes to participate. But as far as that organization, they are just a payoff waiting to happen. And as you can see, when you spend $4.6 billion on an Olympics, there's probably a little bit of cheese to carve off the edges. Next up, last week, Josh Rosen, the quarterback at UCLA, I guess was audacious enough to mention the fact that he didn't believe that school and football, or at least athletics, went together. And a lot of different reactions to that. Now, if you read the whole story and the transcripts of what this kid said, he was spot on with the way that he approached this subject, where he said it just does not fit.
School don't go together. They just don't. Trying to do both is like trying to do 2 full-time jobs. There are guys who have no business being in school. They're here because this is the path to the NFL. There's no other way.
And what's wrong about that? Zero. Do you really think everybody that signs a football scholarship, a baseball scholarship, a basketball scholarship are there to get an education? If you do, you are so naive, it's not even funny. They are not there to get an education, the majority of them. Some of them are. Josh Rosen says, I'm there to get an MBA. I believe him. Why do you think there's a thing, or there's a major called General Studies? Who is this General Studies? What is this General Studies? It's a cover, is what it is. So please, don't rip this kid because he just tells you the truth. That is ridiculous. Next up, I mentioned the name Teddy Bridgewater earlier, and preseason injuries are a fact of life. In fact, last year in practice, Teddy Bridgewater completely blew his knee out. Not a little bit. I mean, he made spaghetti out of his ligaments all through his knee. And it's a great example of how bad the NFLPA, the Players Union mentioned in that headline, is. Because here's a guy that normally you'd see a player sign a contract in most other sports. He'd be pretty set. His money would be guaranteed. He'd get all of it. And with an injury, sure, you give up some leverage, but you give up so much leverage in this case. Next year they could freeze him out, pay him $1.3 million. I know in the real world that's a fortune, but on a guy that's just ruined his body, that was his only really way of making that kind of cash. It's just not right. And we don't see it in other major sports, but the owners in the NFL are able to continue to take advantage of the players because of the corrupt and inept NFLPA. Next up is I want to say a karma alert. Let's call this a karma alert. Big game hunter, going to go shoot some elephants? Okay. How's that going to work out for you? Here's a great description.
Aw, animals.
Elephant tramples hunter during failed trophy hunt.
Of course he did.
If hunting animals significantly bigger and stronger than you makes you feel tough, probably best not to let them outsmart you first.
Uh-oh.
An Argentinian man learned this lesson too late in life, and now his hunting days and living days are over. On August 12th, 46-year-old Jose Monsalves, along with another man from Argentina and 3 Namibian men, were out tracking a herd of elephants at a private wildlife area. The men were reportedly looking for a prime spot to target the elephants from. They should have been keeping an eye on the animals themselves. When the elephants caught sight of their predators, one of them went rogue and charged toward them. Caught off guard, the men weren't able to get their weapons ready, and the elephant made Mr. Monsalves pay dearly. He was trampled and crushed. The men were known to be professional big game hunters and did have the correct permits. Guess no one mentioned that to the elephant. Yet another tale of when hunting backfires.
Karma, she is a bitch. Yeah, you know, sometimes you eat the bear and sometimes the bear eats you. That's the definition of proper hunting. And in this case, the other side has a chance. Not much of a chance, so you're not that brave. All right, let's go on to the next story. For those of you that don't know what a Waffle House is, Waffle House is a restaurant down in the South, primarily a breakfast spot. But I know people eat there all day long, but it's very easy to build. You got a lot of brick. You've got a same footprint and model for what each store looks like, and a lot of glass because you can look in. It's open 24 hours. You always know what's going on at a Waffle House. Well, this particular Waffle House, it had a little problem. Yeah. There was a guy who was, let's say, oversharing. He was outside of this particular Waffle House, and he was, for lack of a better term, buck-ass naked. And when you see what a Waffle House looks like, we're going to run a picture here. You'll see that there is a lot of glass. See all that glass in the front? Now, picture sitting at one of those tables right near the glass, and Sparky's walking along the window area there, and this guy gets arrested. He was completely naked, and he was, let's just say, sharing his sausage through the window at Waffle House, whose motto at times with, various parts of their menu, smothered, covered, sausaged, but oversharing is the best way to say what happened here at Waffle House. I'd like to finish up Butthurt with a reminder. Hey, regular season is just around the corner. Last time we had a football game being played, a real football game. Apologies to the people who participated in these preseason practice games. But the last real game was the Super Bowl. And for those of you that are Atlanta Falcons fans, let's just show this. This best describes the last thing that happened. Yes, I believe a Heimlich maneuver would have been the best thing to happen at 28-3, but unfortunately the Heimlich maneuver did not come, and the Falcons managed to lose that game, as we all know, and some of us just enjoy more than others. That'll do it for Butthurt of the Week. Up next is a little real-world news. What's going on in the real world for those of you that haven't kept track? How about a little crazy story to start off real world news? And it's something I didn't know, but I'm a little smarter because I researched this and put this show together. Did you know that the Vatican, that Vatican, Rome, the Pope, one of the smallest countries in the world, a few blocks wide or whatever the hell it is, has a secret time machine where they were able to take a photograph of Jesus Christ that happened in the past. I won't bother to explain this further. We'll let the video talk for itself.
The Vatican hides a secret time machine. It took a photograph of Jesus Christ from the past. I'm translating this from Spanish
or
into
translating.
English.
Translating, maybe? Yeah.
I've seen this image for the past few years floating on the internet, and it always amazed me. It's supposed to be an image of Jesus Christ
amazes you.
talking
Amazes
to
me you believe it.
St. Peter, and behind them is the beloved disciple of Christ, the youngest of his disciples, who was still a teenager at that time. He had not yet grown
What's his name?
able to grow a beard. So he was, about 15, 16 years old. St. John, the beloved disciple of Christ.
St. John the Beloved. Okay. Well, so now we've got a picture of Christ that the Vatican got with their time machine. They like to keep in the bowels of St. Peter's Basilica, no doubt. Right next to the Ark of the Covenant and everything else that's important in the Catholic Church. Wow. Yeah, okay. That's a little crazy. Another story that came out this week in the real world was a reminder out there that as bad as jobs can be in our world, in the ancient world, especially the Egyptian world, there were some pretty nasty jobs. Let's go down a quick list here.
From using cats to win a battle to spreading lead around their eyes, here are 9 crazy things the ancient Egyptians did. Number 9, smeared with honey. Number 8, defeated by cats. Number 7, fertility tests. Egyptians created an entire medical system for giving birth. Their methods to test fertility and pregnancy were truly advanced for their time, even if we might think they are incredibly weird. To test fertility, some doctors rubbed oil all over a woman's body and told her to lie down until the morning. When she woke up, if she looked fresh and good, they ruled that she was fertile. Number 6, protective makeup. Wow. Number 5, harsh punishment. Harsh punishments for crime are not unknown in the ancient world, and certainly not in ancient Egypt. According to one text, the punishment for a major crime is described as 100 blows and 5 wounds. Ooh. Number 4, laxatives galore. Number 3, necrophilia. Number 2, planned parenting.
Let's leave that one alone.
Number 1, a war on lice. Had lice are parasites that love a good head of human hair.
You imagine
they
that
can
back
cause
then?
a tickling sensation as the lice move around,
Tickling
as well as
sensation.
itching and sores. For us modern-day people in first world countries, lice are a fleeting
Yeah.
problem treated with a
Here's
special
the bad
kind of
job in
shampoo,
Egypt coming
and if
up
need
here.
be, treating the entire home with sprays. Not the case in other countries, and certainly not the case in ancient Egypt.
How do you de-lice people? You know, that last picture. They've got people that are standing, the royalty types, and then you've got the slave types or the worker types de-licing their masters. And one can only imagine in places where hair grows, the different spots that would have to be de-liced. That was a crummy job back in ancient Egypt. But just to let you know that sociologically, and I think every other way of developing and advancing, ancient Egypt's got nothing on us, because there are what you could call shitty jobs out there that exist today that you probably don't want. One of them would be the assistant, the tail holder. But the one you really don't want is the Jedi master there wrapped in plastic with what you don't see, the gas mask and the goggles, about waist deep in an elephant's butt. Doesn't get much shittier than that. I'll just stop and I'll leave it there. Well, speaking of bad karma and bad things, Hollywood has really run into a bit of a bad spot during this summer season, having one of the worst summer box offices they've had in the last 25 years. A lot of explanations for it. The blockbuster implosion here implied with Spielberg and Lucas and company. I've just got one easy way to explain this for Hollywood. You don't have any original ideas. You are out. This is a shot from about the 8th King Arthur movie. Really? Seriously? You don't have anybody historically, make-believe even, that you could go back to besides King Arthur that's been told and explained and mutilated innumerable times by innumerable actors and storytellers? You just don't have anything new to say. So until you do, why don't you shut up? And that usually means come Thanksgiving and Christmas. That's when the big movies that everybody wants to see are going to be coming out. Next up on the list is, this is a strange story. This is about a cabbie in New York. And guys have driven cabbie, that's a tradition. That's almost an industry where you're born into it. And here's an example of a guy that I think he'd been driving cab for 30-something years. And one morning or one night, he passed away in his car at the wheel on the side of the road or at the curb right by where the taxi area, the taxi company's location. Took 18 hours before somebody found this poor guy's body. Here's a group photo, the guy with the scarf and the brown hat in the middle. That's the poor gentleman that passed away, and then no one noticed he was dead in the car for 18 hours. But being New York City, there's always another story in New York City that kind of tops that. 18 hours in a cab and nobody noticed? How about cops stashing dead bodies in the Transit Authority employee break rooms? I don't know what your break room looks like at work. I don't know if you got a little mini locker room there. But for the Transit Authority, and for those of you that don't know what a TA is, a Transit Authority, that would be the subways and buses in New York City. All the employees have their break rooms. And unfortunately, they better check all the closets, because the PD is stashing dead bodies in the break room closets. That's not good at all. Next up in our real world news, how about Taco Bell in the news? How, you may say? Are they deep frying another taco? No. Are they offering a different kind of meat? No. How about a Taco Bell takeout order was a focus of a bloody beef, no pun intended. This man hits his brother with a bat because he had brought him the wrong tacos, the wrong kinds of tacos. Tolerance knows no lack of bounds in this case, but that would be the gentleman that decided to take a baseball bat to his brother because he had brought him the wrong tacos. Seriously. Is there a right taco when it comes to Taco Bell? I don't think so. Baseball bat might be overreacting just a little bit. Here's a reminder that everything old is new again. We talked a little bit about ancient Egypt. How about an ancient disease that, there's been a lot of that in the last 5 years or so. We have seen an increase in the number of people in this country that have not had shots from an early age that prevents some of these diseases. Or socially, there's clean water, clean this, clean that. So you don't have a lot of the problems. Well, in Arizona, it was discovered this last week that a oldie but a goodie is back and rearing its ugly head. Yep, fleas and the plague. Not any plague, the Black Plague.
New information out of Arizona shows that fleas have tested positive for the Black Plague.
Bring out your dead! Bring out your dead! Bring out your dead! And we all know what goes after bring out your dead. I'm feeling much better. No, you're not. Bam! Yeah, Arizona, fleas, plague, that ought to do wonders for their winter golf season and for their bookings, at least in the short term. You've got to at least pucker up and think about it a little bit before you go ahead and book that next trip. That'll do it for Real World News. That means now we move into our next segment. It's hard not to enjoy this stuff. I'm sorry. It's a guilty pleasure of mine, and I hope you enjoy it. And we call it our Redneck segment. Look at that face. That face tells a lot of stories. Well, you get a lot of these redneck compilation videos out there, and I'm sorry, maybe it's just me. They tickle the hell out of me. And here's just one that we found this week. That'll be our Redneck Recognize. Dad! That's one way to get rid of your new son-in-law. Yes, those are skis. Yes, that's a dirt road. Here comes a tip.
Watch out for oncoming traffic.
Oh! He was doing so good until he got that tip. Speaking of tips. Oh!
Close up the back. Now look at that bad boy.
Yeah, don't worry. It's just just bees. Or a hornet's nest. What could happen? Ow! 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 I love that. I love that to death. And hey, what would a Redneck Recognize segment as we get into the final heartbeats of this show be without a tip of the hat to the best state in this nation for weird stories? And that would be the one and only Florida. Couldn't begin to tell you, but there are several kinds of stories you find nowhere but in Florida. Let's go over a few of those. Exactly what kind of stories, you may ask? Well, here's a few of these 49 crazy headlines. Florida man attempts to smoke crack in an ICU intensive care unit, almost burns down the hospital. A lot of oxygen being used in an ICU. Probably not a good idea to try to smoke crack as you visit your favorite relative. Only in Florida. Next story up on our Florida list is a Florida man that claims his wife was kidnapped by, did he mean hooligans? Holograms? Yep. Lucky guy, his name was not released. It's better to be unknown and have people wonder than to have your name included and remove all doubt as to who the moron is. Next one up, a Florida man that attacked his nephew over undercooked noodles. Well, it's one thing to take a baseball bat to somebody that brings you the wrong kind of tacos, But hey, if you have undercooked noodles, that is where I draw the line personally, especially if I be a Florida man. Next story up is, yes, a Florida man announced that he's exploring a presidential run. How do you think this is going to go? I don't know. Not good, I'm guessing. Might run into a little bit of resistance. All right, that'll do it for Unsafe Spaces this week. But as we do every week, I want to leave you with a feel-good story. Feel-good story is more of a function of good news. Because in the world of traumatic brain injuries, TBIs, or CTE, or Alzheimer's and other various neurological diseases, brain diseases, there's also ALS. There are some studies out there now, or a study out there now, where they say researchers are getting close to drugs for either severe head injuries or ALS and how to treat them. That is something I believe later in this week, this information is going to be released. And this could be a huge breakthrough for people that suffer from traumatic brain injuries, or also that, like my great friend Dwight Clark, the wide receiver for the 49ers, he's been diagnosed with ALS. And it would be unbelievable to have a breakthrough that would save him the trauma, the problems with going through that disease. He's a brave dude. I love the guy to death, and he deserves to have them figure out what's causing this terrible disease. All right, that'll do it for Unsafe Spaces. Want to tell you that if you have any questions, any suggestions, any stories you'd like to pass along, send them to producer@unsafespacesusa.com. That's producer@unsafespacesusa.com. And if you want to find us out there on the web again, go to Unsafe Spaces USA, and there we're on iTunes, SoundCloud, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. You found us. Pass us along. Feel free to copy and share this or any of the highlights of this show we come up with. End of the show. What's that mean? That means happy trails to you.
Happy trails to you. Until we meet again, happy trails to you. Keep smiling until then. Who cares about